Welcome to this week's podcast. I'm super excited that the guest I have on here today has been such an important part of my life for the last 12, 13 years. He has challenged me more than anyone on this planet in good ways and uncomfortable ways, but always leading to the good. He is a crazy Canadian. He is a pinnacle leader. He has traveled and lived in over 100 odd countries in this world. If I think of someone who I want to be when I grow up, it's this bloke. We are the same age. Well, no, I think I'm like 4 or 5 months older than you, but that's it. I think this is the guy version of me. And I love all that this man brings to the world. He has helped me grow into someone who's been able to find my range, which we're going to talk about today, but also to be able to help find me. That's huge. And I had a kick-ass life before I met this bloke. Well, I have something just that bigger than I ever dreamt of. He's trained millions of people around the world, so much mindset stuff. I can't rattle off all of his stuff, but I will promise that in the show notes, I'll put a link to everything you want to follow this guy in every way that you can. I love that he's recently started mastering reels like me, and that he's just so open to learning and being present on this planet. Please help me welcome, or I have the pleasure of introducing a beautiful soul in my world, Mr. David T.S. Wood. And it's weird, I don't call many people Miss, but for me, you are Mr. David T.S. Wood.
That's funny. Hey, Jen,
listen,
as always, it's always great to chat. And, I was actually planning on coming down to your place today.
I know.
I happen to be in Australia, but I'm like 3 hours away right now. But at least we get to hang out here and have a real deep chat. And then next time I'm in town, I'm going to be down there surfing with you. So
that will be fun. Thank you. So we were talking about what to talk about, because you have impacted so many areas of my life. Financially, by you helping me grow has helped me grow my businesses. With my relationships are worlds apart to what they used to be. But a big part of it is me. You have helped me on so many levels learn to be unapologetically me. So many people nowadays, they just see the end result of what you've been kicking my ass to do for the last more than a decade, which is this, psychedelic, hippie, dyke, unicorn, glitter wearing me.
Unapologetically kick-ass human on the planet.
Yeah, and you helped me.
But comfortable, Jen, it was really interesting is even how you speak today. There's this ease with it all. Whereas I think in the early days it was a lot of force, right? And it was kind of like, it was as if you were like consciously being something, where now I think it's just you. And it's so beautiful, and it can be crazy in one moment, and it can be deep and intimate and introspective and sensual. And so that whole tapestry now just feels in alignment versus, that one thing or the other. Because I think in the old days, do you remember, you were kind of either a crazy 10 out of 10, or you were like, you were the monk.
Well, I was the recluse. I didn't want to play with anyone. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And then you saying that just makes me remember when I was 17, 18-year-old in the army and freshly coming out and literally trying to work out who I was. I remember a girl, Wanda Body was her name. And I found her on Facebook only a few years ago and reconnected. But she said to me one day, Jen, you behave the way you think people think you should behave, being an out dyke. And I kind of went, and reflecting so many years ago, that's 40 odd years ago, she was right. I was working out who I was, where nowadays I'm really comfortable in our skin. But I had such a big growth point, which I'd love us to start into, was when I was on your island, your private island in Belize, as people have.
Sounds very grand.
Why don't we say?
Doesn't it sound? Well, I mean, it is grand. I mean,
it is.
I always want to have an island so I could tell everyone to get lost and have my own set of rules. But yeah, it's a magical place, right? Thatch Key.
Thatch Key in Belize. You got to check it out, and it's an eco island, guys. It is seriously cool. So I want to talk about that. Maybe, how about you just give us a snapshot of even what took you, because I have not told your story. Do you want to give me the guts of your story that you want to share as to how you got to become from, the darts playing guy in England through to owning your own private.
I'll do the elevator version because I know
Yeah,
these
do that. Yeah.
are quite short. You know, grew up by Western standards in real poverty in a condemned building in the East End of London. And you know, I hated. Well, I use the word hate now only in here. It's one of my least favorite words, but I hated everything. I hated school. I hated my parents. They separated. And you know, I left school at 15. Again, I just couldn't cope with it. Started dabbling in business. I was a window cleaner, a chimney sweep, you know, and I was like Oliver Twist, right? I just sort of hustle. And the radical thing that changed my life, Jen, was, and I didn't know the importance of that, because everyone I knew were broke. They were getting high or they were getting drunk. And I left on a 6-day trip, which turned into 10.5 years of backpacking around the world, 42 countries. And so I was out of this environment, and I was learning in all these new environments, 42 countries, 42 cultures. And I found my way to Canada. I was illegal in Canada for 3 years, managed to bring all of that sort of, you know, the passion from travel and all of these different experiences. And I started dabbling in business in Canada. I grew multiple large companies and became very wealthy financially. So it's kind of like from a rags to riches kind of a story with all of this, you know, travel and experiences and sailing across the Atlantic. So it's kind of a bit like that. I hope that's kind of fast enough for you, but.
Yeah, that's cool. And then you went and bought an island in Belize. Belize is the Caribbean, isn't it? The bottom of the Caribbean.
Yeah,
for those of you who don't know it, I know it takes 44 hours to fly there from Australia. I've done it.
How many Aussies flew in for that one event? I did an event there. I think they were like half of the group.
Half of us were. It was like half a dozen of us or something. It was 10 or something. It was, yeah, that was a stretch. It's a long way to go. But anyway, so at this event, and this is something I love about David, so often what my observation is, you help people move without them noticing that they've moved. But in that case, and I'd been with you for a couple of years, you know, through some programs by then, and I had been, you know, doing some cool stuff. And I'll remember it. I've told this story so many times, including to the people involved, and that I share the story, they know. So we arrive on this island, 44 hours to get there. We're met with you know, I was not drinking, so I haven't, you know, like a virgin pina colada or something. And it was like, okay, cool, meet in the Palapa, the big house in the middle of the island to start. And we're sitting there, and it was only what, 12 of us or something. It was a small class, and it was like a leadership.
It was actually 30.
Was it 30? Gosh,
30, yes. Yeah.
But it was like a leadership retreat for a week, and we're sitting there, and you know me pretty well by then. Probably you knew me way more than I thought. And we're sitting there, and I remember you said something. You were on the stage, just getting ready to get started. You said something, and I went, "Oh, piss off, David!" And then behind me, I heard this. I went, "Fucking what?" And then I heard this. And I thought, "Holy shit, someone's going to die!" And turned around, and there was a woman sitting behind me who was a Mormon, and I had just crossed every line possible. I was the loud, in your face. Totally.
Yeah, she wasn't just saying piss off either. She was using.
No, I know. I said fuck for sure. Yeah, I say fuck on my podcast, David. It's okay. So, but I did, and it was so big, and your answer, and then you baited me, and I of course went further. Thank you for that. That's part of what you do. And the end result was one of the biggest growing instances of my life. So prior to that, I had been the loud, in your face, everyone, it's just me, just deal with it kind of chick, or the recluse where I just don't play with anyone. And I had no middle ground, because I thought middle ground meant boring, mediocre, and I wouldn't touch it. So I was just extreme kind and angry and stuff.
Yeah, let's give context to that for a second. So if we look at a range like 0 to 10, in every area, we have sexual range, we have financial range, we have, you know, emotional range. So if Jen was a 10, which was that, you know, loud and, you know, and just showing up and unapologetic, and maybe, you know, sort of
into your face confrontation,
more forceful or inclusive, hiding, not showing up, you know, behind closed doors. And then of course we've got my Mormon friend who was also, she was, her range, let's say religious range, was
Yeah.
she was the 10 over here, where
Mm.
everything Jen was doing
I
was
pushed every
like,
button she had.
it was pushing every button she had. So Jen's a 10, kind of like, rah! And this other person's a 10 in her spirituality, and then these two titans mix. So I was baiting them because together they both found a middle range where, she found more tolerance and more understanding, and Jen was able to sort of soften and listen, and right. So it was a really beautiful
It was huge. It
right.
was, but you bloody tied us together for like 2 days. You made us do everything.
I made them partners so that they had to keep pushing each other's buttons and finding. And by the way, it's funny because I know you both so well, and it's
Yeah,
just that was one of those catalyst moments, right?
it was, and we became like beautiful, beautiful, beautiful friends out of it. And she's an amazing soul on this planet, and my life's enriched for it. But fuck, I hated you at that moment. It was
But
me. But that's, you have the beauty of doing those things. So let's talk into that range, Dave, because you're right, it shows up in everything. It shows up in money, relationships, work, careers, everything we do.
yeah, and I think what I've noticed, I've trained over 1 million people, Jan, is that people find a comfort level, maybe from a 4 to a 6, let's say. And we can encompass range. We could say, hey, you do anything, say you do everything. But what I'm saying is that people, because they want to fit in, and they're terrified, not everyone, but most people are terrified of what other people think of them and what other people are thinking about them, that they'll just sort of find a little window, maybe a 4, maybe a 3 to 5, 4 to 6 type of thing, and that's where they stay, and terrified to go and explore the depth of, intimacy, or the depth of emotion, or the depth of truth, I mean, I could go into every single realm, or to go to a 10, to go to that extreme where, and again, if we talk, I'll use sexual as an example because it's interesting, so from tantric, which is about breath and intimacy, and not chasing an orgasm. It's really about being present with another person and discovering something that's so. And then you've got, the erotic side, with bondage and extreme, that, and we can all be comfortable in the whole range. But however, a lot of people in their sexual life, they'll find, they'll learn something when they're young, and they'll be from a 3 to 4, and that's what they do for their whole life, right?
Yes, agree. And then that shows up in, if we're not exploring, from my experience, if we're not exploring our range in one area, it means, we can be restricted in other areas too. So yeah, it's an
and in the end, we start to believe the story we're selling ourselves.
yes.
We actually think this is who we are, right? I know on that island, if we come back to later on, I mean, Jen would not be seen in a dress, but the last.
You said, I said to you, don't tell the dress story, David.
We're exploring a range, so we got
yeah. Okay, I did.
In a dress, and she's got makeup on, and everyone's in love with her, and she's softened, and she's got tears. So that hard kind of, the army kind of fighting the world, Jen had surrendered to this, and she knew she wouldn't live in a dress. And she didn't want to be in a dress, but she was okay to be in that dress for that moment of time and discover and feel something that she hadn't allowed herself to feel, right? And remember, when you came out, I've got to say this, you came out at a time in history where it wasn't cool to be gay. So I
got kicked out of the army for being gay. It was really not cool.
My brother would be just a little bit older than you, and he had to hide. He actually married someone because being gay in England meant it was almost like a death sentence, right? So
yeah, in those days it was. Yeah. It's huge. It's huge what's possible. So, part of what I said that you help people do is I see that you're a master at helping people shift. It's like you don't realize you've shifted till you shifted. And trust me, when people who are listening, if you ever get a chance to meet Dave, that it's not that he's going to go and make you hang around with someone that you're that uncomfortable with, but how cool in life that I was able to step into someone with had such deep faith in a different way. And I, just understanding her faith was, something, and I'm the hippie Hindu versus, the devout Mormon. I got so much out of what her spirituality is to her. It was so good.
I think you bring up something interesting there as a point, which I think could be a whole book, to be honest, is how, black and white thinking. And I think one of the reasons and I'm saying this, and it may sound conceited, but I live such a beautiful life and everything's so easy. and it flows so easily because I don't have black and white thinking. I don't, when someone comes up to me and they have a polarizing point of view, I'm okay that they do. I don't need to change them, and it doesn't need to change me either. I can just be in a conversation with people or be in situations where, I don't have to have an answer. I can be in the question and live in the question without the answer. And it allows me to discover, like you did with her, is to surrender to a conversation of understanding that opens up all these new doors without you having to say, well, this is right and that's wrong. And I think most people live in black and white. And what I learned, and I think what happened, Jen, when I left England, I backpacked for 10.5 years and I left only for 6 days. So I didn't have a big plan to travel, but everything I thought was true, and every idea I had as a young man, I'd only learned from the people in my little tiny poverty-stricken area of the world. And so what I thought about French people or the Swiss, or what I thought about the world or Arabs or whatever, it was all just been told to me. And I had all of these preconceived ideas. And when I went out into the world and actually discovered it, now 110 countries, I realized that everything I knew was wrong. It was an assumption. And yet when I went into these cultures, I was able to listen and learn and open. And again, through this exploration of range, because, if you want to live in the world like that, if you want to live in deeper understanding, then allowing yourself to move through the range with people really allows you to understand people on a whole other level, right?
Yeah, it does. And part of what you've also taught me, and I've actually done podcasts on it and reels and things over time, is that no matter what I do, 50% of people will love me and 50% of people will never love me, no matter what I do. That was so liberating, David. And then so I don't hold my life back for other people.
And we know it's not 50%, but it's just a good, I started doing this years and years and years ago, where I said I go on the 50% rule. Half the people I meet won't like me. Then I don't struggle when I meet someone who doesn't like me. And if you're going to show up, this is the challenge. When you show up authentically and you're yourself, a lot of people who are hiding or wearing masks, or if they're stuck in the 3 to 4, and you're flowing between a 2 and an 8 or a 1 and a 10, then you're going to piss people off just by your very nature, because your liberation, this freedom that you live under, will actually trigger them, and you're going to find people don't like you. And if you get caught up on that, but here's the secret though, Jen. It's not that you go on the understanding that they don't like you, but you don't have to dislike them because they like you. So the freedom is, oh yeah, you're one of those. That's awesome. And when
enjoy life,
still be here, right? So you don't get into that sort of being triggered to be, upset with them because they're upset with you, right?
Absolutely. That was liberating for me. And definitely in my younger years, and whether it's a younger thing or not, although I remember in my younger years just saying, well, this is just me, kind of fucking get used to it. So I was caring about, but trying to show that I wasn't caring about the fact that they didn't like me. Where now I'm just me. There's nothing. You've taught me so well how to get the mask off and find my range. So thank you. You've given me a richer life.
Oh. And we're going to put you in the dress again. Watch it.
Shut up. Stop it. You are. I actually give this man credit for being the person who taught me how to cry. So as a child, when I was growing up, the more we cried, the more we were beaten. And I never cried thinking about it. I never cried for decades. And David helped me feel safe. So you do it every fucking time, mate.
So she's going to cry. But this is the range. This is the range we're talking about. This example is that. But so again, I know it's so hard because range is such a big, vast subject. But being comfortable with our emotions and showing that is one, let's say that's in the 1s and the 2s, right? And being a ferocious warrior that stands up for a friend, and will fight with every ounce of the body is, let's say that's the other end of that emotional range. And we want to be as comfortable in that softness as we are in that ferocity, right? Without the anger. I think ferociousness without anger is really the, right? So were you about to cry? See, I let you off the hook. I distracted you.
Thank you. You didn't distract me. I allowed it. I did it. It's finished. Thank you. But that's been a precious thing for me. That's been that I was able to feel emotions, and that's made such a different thing, such a difference to my my relationships in life, to be able.
Well, I look at the primary one with Alice, and I just watch the love that you openly share together. and that intimacy that you share, you know, even every time you're online, you know, when you stand together and you look at each other's eyes and, hey, Miss Alice, you know, hey, Miss, and there's that beautiful softness and that vulnerability that you're not talking about, you're demonstrating, and people are witnessing by watching. And that's the beauty of living in range, is that you don't have to talk about range. You inspire people. When people see your courage, it's like the first person out on the dance floor, you know, you're at a wedding. And when I go to weddings, my goal is to dance with every single human being, man and woman, at the wedding, old and young, and people who've never danced. I'll go and dance at the table with them, and that's what I do. That's my thing, right? But what you'll witness in the dance floor is that until that one person goes out, everyone wants to, but no one's willing to go first, right? And that's the beauty, right? So if you're going to live in range, you got to have the courage to actually go first as well, right? So
well, that's that's another thing you've taught me, that everyone's waiting for someone else to go first. So we were at a gig on the weekend. We had like 4 days there together, and there was a function, the fancy dress up night, on the Saturday night. And it's just a dumb thing. I just get on and dance. And I grabbed a chick who I didn't know, and she said she'd never danced. So I was dancing and spinning around and doing my version of what I think dancing is. And she said, thank you. And there was no one else there yet, dancing. And she thanked me. She'd never danced like that. And I didn't know who she was. She was just a chick standing on her own. I went, come on, let's dance. And it was great. We both had a really cool time with it. So there's so much possible.
By the way, you look beautiful. I was there.
Well, thank you. Yes, you were there. I'm going to cut this off right now because I want to make a part 2, because I'm known for short bites within my podcasts.
Sure.
So I'm just going to take a breather. Guys, check into the next episode where I'm going to continue with Mr. David T.S. Wood. But I hope you've enjoyed this touch on our range. And go to the show notes too, because I'm going to put links on how to follow David and everything he does. I recommend that to the max.